Oh, hello, Chief. Good to see you.
Hello there. Good, thanks. Good to be seen.
Hi.
Hey, Sharon. Hello, judges.
We have David and Representative Collier.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, Nicole.
Hi, how are you doing, Reggie?
I'm good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Hi, Judge.
Hi,
Well,
Hi. You guys doing all right?
doing fine. I'm trying to set up the pictures so I can see everybody.
Okay.
Here we go. We are waiting for Chief Justice Raddick, right?
Mhm.
Anybody else?
Let's see. But Commissioner Covey, we have Judge Evans, we have both representatives. Mr. Rios, Gonzalo Rios, I don't think is with us yet, and he said he was going to join us.
Okay, well, we're fine.
This is Judge Hurley. Judge Ellison sends his regrets. He had a doctor's appointment he couldn't avoid, so he sent his regrets that he couldn't be here.
Thanks.
Thank you, Judge Hurley.
Yes.
And Judge Keller, it looks like we have Judge Maderi. So I think, yeah, I believe the only member we're missing who planned to be here is Mr. Rios.
Is Chief Justice Raddick here?
Oh, I'm sorry, and Chief Justice Raddick, that's right.
Someday I'll figure out how to do this, but it's not today. You know what? We can. What time is it?
102?
We can go ahead. Do we have a quorum?
We do.
Let's go ahead and call the roll and get started with the stuff that is not substantive, okay?
That sounds good.
Megan, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Judge. So the Honorable Sharon Keller.
Here.
Mr. Alex Bennon.
Here.
The Honorable Valerie Covey.
Here.
The Honorable Brandon Creighton. The Honorable Richard Evans.
here.
Mr. Gonzalo Rios. I believe he just joined. The Honorable Nathan Heck.
Here.
The Honorable Missy Maderi.
Present.
The Honorable Nicole Collier.
Here.
The Honorable Reggie Smith.
Here.
The Honorable Sherry Raddick. The Honorable Vivian Torres.
Here.
The Honorable John Whitmire. Judge Keller, we have quorum.
Excuse me. Thank you, Megan. I'm glad that our members who were threatened by the storm are able to be here, and I expect Chief Justice Raddick to be here soon. So let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for making it, you all. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting on June 18th?
I would move approval. Judge Evans.
A second, Alex Bunning.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
The motion passes. My report is next on the agenda. I don't have a lot, but today we're going to go over, the bulk of the meeting is going to be going over legislative proposals and improvement grant requests. And I want to thank our grant review team and our legislative proposal committee because they have spent lots and lots of time on these two matters. And they're all staffed by volunteers. And frankly, some of them have been doing this for many years, just out of the goodness of their heart and because they care about indigent defense. So we really appreciate all of you and thank you. And staff also has put in a lot of time on this, getting it into shape for us to vote on. And they've done their usual great job. And I want to thank them for what they've done. I had no other comments, so that concludes my report. Jeff, are you ready for the director's report?
I am. Yeah, and Kathleen, if you could scroll down to the beginning of the overview document. The report, yeah, right there is perfect. So the director's report today is going to be a little bit different. I want to make sure that all of our members have a good sense of where we're at in terms of both our revenue and our appropriations. For revenue, so just to distinguish the two briefly, revenue, we're talking about the income into the fair defense account, so the money flowing into the account, as opposed to appropriations. This is the spending authority. This is how much the legislature tells us we're allowed to spend. So Kathleen, if you can scroll down to the next part of that. TIDC's fund balance, the revenue, the good news is we're okay for now. If you recall from strategic planning, we were most concerned about our revenue. And I think at that point for a very good reason. In fact, we have our actuals throughout the year for FY20, and we're down $9.4 million. You'll see $10 million on the sheet. We actually got just a little bit more revenue that came in toward the end of this month. Let me back up and say one of the good things that we found out is that we are able to spend monies that accumulated in FY18 and 19. So it's about $28 million that accumulated in the account that we weren't able to spend at that point because of our capped appropriation. So the good news is that the fund balance from last biennium, that $28 million, is more than enough to absorb that $9.4 million shortfall that we're seeing as a result of COVID-19. So the short version here is, I think the big takeaway is that in terms of revenue, we're okay for the moment. If you set aside COVID-19 and think back to kind of pre-COVID, if it's possible, I know it's hard to, we've been in this for so many months now. Our court costs were already starting to go down though. And at some point, whether it's this session or next session, we will really need to look hard at some additional revenue streams, because those court costs continue to go down, and that's our primary source of revenue. So I think that's it for revenue. Again, I think that the big takeaway is that we're in good shape for the next few years because of those accumulated funds from FY18 and 19. Appropriations, and I think most folks know this, but just to reiterate, we like most every other state agency, we were cut 5% for the biennium. For TIDC, what that translates to is about $4.7 million worth of cuts. So that brings our biennial budget from about $94.4 million down to $89.7. So that's kind of what the cuts look like for us. Because that 5% cut came so late in FY20, most of those cuts, not all, but most would have to come out of FY21. And that's not, we've been talking to several other agencies, that's not unusual. That late in the year, most of the funds are already obligated. So we will have to cut from FY21 primarily. So what's the impact on TIDC? Where are we going to cut? Really two major areas, administrative budget and the grants budget. Our administrative budget makes up about 3% of the overall budget, so a relatively small sliver. But we've tried to cut heavily from the admin budget before turning to cutting grants to counties. We're leaving open 3 staff positions that are currently vacant. If you add up their salaries, their benefits, their travel, their office expenses, and you spread that over 2 years, that's about $500,000 worth of savings. We had a planned build out to accommodate those additional employees. We've canceled that build out, and that's again about $400,000 worth of savings. And unfortunately, as much as our staff would like to be traveling and be their boots on the ground in the counties, we are not right now. So there is an additional $45,000 worth of savings this year because of that lack of travel. So that's the admin budget. That still leaves some funds to cut. And as most of you know, grants are the biggest expenditure for TIDC. Well over 95% of our budget is grants from TIDC to the counties. So we're looking at additional grant reductions to counties as a result of that. So let me hand it off to Edwin to talk about what does that mean for improvement grants and what does that mean for formula grants.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as was mentioned earlier, we'll be focusing today on a number of improvement grant requests that have come in this cycle. For 2021, we've received 10 improvement grant applications that we'll review later. Staff has recommended funding 5 of those, largely based on the comments and endorsements of our external grant review committee. And as we will talk about later, also the endorsements of the TIDC Grants and Reporting Committee. So the recommended new improvement grants total $5.1 million this year. And the ones that we are not recommending at this time, most of them are good projects that we believe would be ripe for future funding in a future year. So we anticipate staying engaged with most all of these counties and continuing to work with them to develop their plans for the future. In terms of the formula grant budget, the staff the commission will be considering a budget for FY 2021 today. The staff is recommending budgeting $22 million in formula grants for FY 2021. That's roughly in line with where the formula grant budget was in FY 18 and 19, in other words, the previous biennium. We did boost it up in 2020 based on what at the time seemed like very good budget times when we had been given an increase in our appropriations. But we're suggesting to pare that back to 22 million and put it back in that range where it was in the previous biennium. Also proposing to eliminate the supplemental capital formula grant. That's $1 million special program. On these recommendations, the rural counties will really receive actually all the rural counties will receive more than they did in FY19. That's largely because the commission made a slight modification in the formula that we use to allocate those funds, so that the first $15,000 of expenditures is covered in full. And the effect of that was to mitigate any impact on the smallest counties. And the largest counties will see a modest decline, but not terribly far off from the levels that were funded in the previous biennium.
So, Judge Keller, I know that's a little bit of a different director's report than normal, but we thought it was important that all the members understand at a high level what's going on in terms of revenue and budget before we jump into all the votes today. And I think that's all I have, unless there are any questions.
No, I agree. I think that's very helpful. All right. Next, I believe, is Judge Maderi. Are we on grants and reporting now? Yes. Judge Maderi, are you ready with your report? Oh.
And Judge, I'm happy to help if you'd like.
Okay. I can't hear Judge Maderi.
Yeah, unfortunately, she's unmuted, but we just can't hear her.
Judge, if Judge Maderi's having difficulty, the next item here is summarizing the committee that she chairs, the Grants and Reporting Committee.
Okay.
If you'd like, I'd be happy to just go over this while we iron out those technical issues.
Yes, please.
So this is page, I'm sorry, I can't see the page number, Toriana. But the TIDC Grants and Reporting Committee met on the 21st of August, just about a week ago via Zoom to consider the new grant applications. And as I mentioned, there were 10 new applications that the committee reviewed. The committee members include, the committee is chaired by Judge Maderi and also Judge Keller and Chief Justice Raddick serve on that committee. So that committee reviewed the 10 applications that were submitted this cycle, and they unanimously recommended 5 applications for approval by the full board. And we'll take these up one by one in a few moments. The 5 that are recommended are listed here in the table. Kerr County for a regional public defender serving 5 counties. Atascosa County for a rural regional public defender office serving 4 counties. A misdemeanor mental health public defender office in Galveston County. A mental health managed assigned counsel program in McLennan, and Indigent Defense Coordinators Program in Nueces County. And I should mention that since one of those was from Nueces, that Judge Maderi did recuse on that matter.
You all hear me now?
Yes, we can, Judge.
Oh my God, I was wondering, I kept saying hello to everyone in the morning. I was like, hi, Judge, and no one was answering me back, and I couldn't figure it out. Okay, I'm so sorry, and I missed that. I jumped off and jumped back on. I just would like to start, and I'll really turn it over to Edwin again, that Jeff and Edwin and everybody worked really, really hard on these. We struggled through some of them, obviously, but they did a great job. And I just wanted to say thank you very much to the staff and to everyone who worked so hard on these. And then Edwin, I'll just let you guys take it away and do your stuff. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Judge Maderi. These 5 are recommended by the staff and the Grants and Reporting Committee for approval. If you'll scroll down just a little bit more, Doriana, there were several that came in that we are not recommending at this time. Burnett, Dallas, Potter, Travis, and Tarrant. And again, we'll briefly touch on these in a few moments. Partly because some of these projects are good ones, but in tighter budget times, we just can't do everything that we'd like to. And so we plan to stay in touch and continue to work with a number of these counties to refine their proposals, some of which weren't quite ready for action, and hope to bring some of them, if not all of them, back in a future fiscal year for your consideration. The committee also did recommend or endorse the suggested amount of $22 million for the FY 2021 formula grant and taking out that line item for the supplemental urban capital formula grant. So again, we'll touch on all these items one by one in due course. So next we're going to move to Sharon, who has a report on budget matters for us. Sharon, do you want to take it away?
All right, here we go. All right, good afternoon, everyone. As you can see on page 6, we have the fund and revenue balance sheet. This is our balance sheet for previous fiscal years, FY18 and FY19. For FY18, you see we had a remaining balance of $345,831. We have one obligation within that fiscal year, which is for Harris County. We've made a final payment. And so the remaining balance that's showing in FY18 for $237,826 will be moved over into FY19. FY18 officially ends at the end of August. And so of course we needed to move that money forward, take care of any obligations we had then in Harris County. That technical support grant will be taken care of, remainder of that grant in FY19. And then of course you see at the bottom part, we have FY19. We show remaining cash in the fund. We show our obligations that we still have pending in FY19. We see we have some competitive grants, we have some technical support grants, and we have a payment to one Innocence Project school. So that remaining balance that's showing in FY19 of $56,000, that will be moved forward also. And those are our 2 former year. The next page we have is our comparison of revenue sheet. As Jeff talked about earlier in the presentation, this just shows for 18, 19, and 20. If you go to the last 3 columns there, where it shows from September through August, you can see the revenue that we have received for court costs, surety bond, and state bar. So as you can see, so for FY20, we collected $892,333, which is a reduction of $5.8 million from the amount received last year in FY19. And if you, but as Jeff discussed earlier, since we have extra funding that we collected in 18 and 19, the last biennium, over the amount that was appropriated. So we have in the bank an additional $28 million that we can use to take care of us for the next 2 to 3 years. And the next page is our FY 2020, the budget. It shows, the second column shows our budget that we, any adjustments we have in the budget as of June. It shows our actuals that we have as of today. The next column shows what we project out for FY20. And then of course, the final column is what we propose for FY21. And this budget here takes into account the grants that we will discuss later in the meeting. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. So if you can go to the next page, we'll start going through our formula grants that are ready for your consideration this year. The first application is from Kerr County for the Hill Country Rural Regional Public Defender Office. And to present that, please, I'll let Scott Ehlers take it over.
If I may interrupt, I'll need to recuse myself from any discussion or vote.
As will
Thank
I.
you. Thank you, Judge Evans.
As will I as well.
Thank you, Judge Torres.
All right, so good afternoon. The first grant proposal that we're going to discuss is the Hill Country Regional Public Defender Office. This is a request from Kerr County. The office would cover Kerr, Bandera, Gillespie, Medina, and Kendall counties. TIDC staff did a planning study for this office. We worked closely with the county judges to craft this proposal. Kathleen, Jeff, and I, we did presentations to Medina, Kerr, and Kendall counties, and we received very positive feedback. The proposal calls for 31 staff members. They will be housed in offices in Kerr and Medina counties. They are seeking $2.5 million, just over that in year one, and just over $2 million in subsequent years. Both our external grant review committee and TIDC staff support this application, and the grants and reporting committee has endorsed it unanimously. We have Judge Robert Kelly from Kerr County and Judge Chris Stewart from Medina County here to offer some brief remarks and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. I'm Rob Kelly. I'm the Kerr County Judge. And I wanted to say that we're very excited about the opportunity of joining the PDO family. When I first took the bench and went to new judge school out in Lubbock, Judge Evans was my mentor. We listened to the TIDC presentation and turned to one another and said, I guess we're going to have to take a serious look at this. And last year we filed our intent. We worked on a possible proposal, but didn't go through with it. We kind of dipped our toes in the water, but we were very impressed with the program. And this year we came back not 3 counties strong, but 5 counties strong. And I can tell you that the excitement with all the stakeholders in this is almost palpable. And we are very honored that you've selected us and hope to continue to earn your respect. So thank you very much. Chris?
I would agree. When we're sitting out in the outlying areas, it's hard to find judges to come out and take our cases and find quality defense lawyers sometime and just to get them out there. So this program is going to help us tremendously to move our dockets and get things going. Judge Kelly's taken the lead on this, and I think Kerr County has identified a building to house it in. Medina County is in the process of building a new courthouse annex, so we'll have room to house a PDO in our location also, which can handle Bandera County, and they can travel throughout the district of the 5 counties. So thank y'all very much for your consideration, and we appreciate moving forward with this.
And just to follow up, this week we put $1.5 million worth of property 1 block from the courthouse under contract to be able to house the PDO. So we are hitting the ground running.
Okay, there is a committee motion to award FY21 improvement grant in the amount of $2,503,264 to Kerr County to establish the Hill Country Public Defender Office. It's a committee motion, so don't need a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes, and I want to thank both of y'all for coming and all your work on this, really. And you too, Scott. I think it's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it works. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys have been great to work with, Jeff and Scott and everyone else. So with that, I think I'll sign off.
Okay.
You too, Judge. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Judge Maderi,
Yes.
where are we going now?
I can hear you. I think we'll just go straight down the list then and go start talking about the award for Wilson, Carnes, and Frio. Do you want to go there,
Sure.
Edwin? All right, Edwin.
Edwin, I think you're on mute.
I apologize. If you'll turn to page 10 in the meeting book, we will take up the request from Atascosa County. This is another rural regional public defender office that will provide representation in felony, misdemeanor, and juvenile cases, as well as appeals, and cover Atascosa, Wilson, Carnes, and Frio counties. They propose to contract with Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid to operate the program. As you all know, the Commission currently provides funding to several other TRLA-based public defender offices around the state, and they've been very successful at improving representation in those parts of our state. The public defender office will be better positioned to ensure that dockets are staffed by defenders and reduce delays related to out-of-town attorney availability. It's one of the big issues that they're looking forward to tackling through this program. And of course, the PD will be closely monitoring jail intakes and making contact with defendants very early. So it's one of the most important benefits in terms of keeping cases moving and beginning representation early in the process. Our external reviewers were very supportive of the program, as was the staff, and it was unanimously recommended by the TIDC Grants Reporting Committee last week. Judge Hurley is here. He is a constitutional county judge from Atascosa County. Judge Hurley, do you want to say a few words about the request?
Sure, thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank the board for considering it and for the staff for taking us this far. We are all very excited about this and the way it's going to streamline the justice system in all 4 counties, and it will provide better indigent defense and, as you said, more expeditiously, and it'll provide better bond maintenance. It's just going to streamline it, everything from magistration all the way out, and we're very pleased about it. And I want to thank TRLA, who's played a major role in helping me work with the other counties to make sure they understood what they were approving. But we do have unanimous consent from all commissioners courts, all county judges, both of our district judges, and our county court at law judge here in Atascosa County are all 100% behind this, and we're all extremely excited about it. So I don't know what more I can say except thank you very much for the consideration.
Thank you, Judge Hurley. Judge Maderi, would you like to call for that committee, present that committee motion?
Sure, absolutely. Committee motion to award a new FY21 improvement grant of $1,511,801 to Atascosa County to establish a regional public defender office with Wilson, Carnes, and Frio counties. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? I'm sorry, is there any discussion on it? My apologies. Any discussion? All right, and are there any no's? All right, motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you so very much. I'll go ahead and sign off too, but thank you so much. We're really looking forward to working with you and getting this implemented. Like Judge Kelly and Judge Schuhart, we're already looking for buildings, so we're going to hit the ground running with it too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Judge Hurley. Thank you, members. Next item is on page 11 of your meeting book. It's our grant request from Galveston County. And to present this one, I'd like to hand it over to Kathleen Casey Gomez.
Thank you, Edwin. So I'll present today the Galveston Misdemeanor Mental Health Public Defender Office. This project would build a mental health public defender office that would represent defendants charged with Class A or B misdemeanors and diagnosed with the serious mental illness, including at bond hearings. This proposal is part of a system-wide modernization project that the county began back in 2017 with Meadows Mental Health and Dr. Tony Fabello. The county just implemented a mental health court that hears felony cases, and Judge Mollier is here with us today to briefly speak on this proposal. TIDC worked with the county to create a planning study, and their proposal does follow our recommendations for attorney and support staffing. The project also includes a multi-year evaluation to be conducted by Meadows Mental Health, and this was unanimously supported by our external grant review committee as well as TIDC staff. And the total grant request is for $780,334. All right, and if Judge Mollier has anything to say, I'll go ahead and hand it off to him.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. First off, I just really want to thank the commission for all your hard work and time y'all put into everything that y'all do. I also want to give very special thanks to Mr. Burkhart, Mr. Ellers, Ms. Casey Gomez, and Mr. Colfax for all their time and effort in helping me get through this process, educating me about the public defender's office and the advantages. Mr. Burkhart even came down and talked to some of our county court judges to explain to them the advantages and help them in their decision in supporting this public defender's office. So they've all put in a lot of work in helping me out, and I can't express enough how much I appreciate it. And appreciate your consideration of the grant. Like the other judges have already spoken, there's a lot of excitement in Galveston County about the possibility of getting this public defender's office. We're in dire need of it. And everybody in Galveston County is really tired of seeing our county jail be a de facto mental health treatment center. And that's actually giving it too much credit. It's more like a holding center. We're tired of it. We want to do something about it. And we think this would be a very major and excellent step in taking care of that problem. And so I'm going to keep it short, and out of respect for your time, I could probably go on for 15 minutes straight talking about the excitement and what we're looking forward to and the advantages of the office. I think y'all already know that. And I'm also going to follow Mr. Colfax's advice and keep it short. So thank y'all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here, Judge. I appreciate your comments. Judge Maderi, would you like to, we do have a committee motion. Would you like to call that?
Sure. Committee motion to award new FY21 improvement grant of $780,334 to Galveston County to establish a misdemeanor mental health public defender office. All in favor, please say aye.
Sure.
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I forget that discussion part again. Does anybody want to have discussion on this? All right. Anyone is against this? All right, then the motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank y'all very much. Really appreciate it. I'm going to sign off. I evacuated for the storm. I got to pack up and get back home. We really appreciate you though. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you very much, members. Next item is on page 12 of your meeting book. It's the grant request from McLennan County. And I'll lay this one out. This is a request for a mental health managed assigned counsel program. And the county is also, like Galveston County, interested in improving representation for defendants with mental illness, many of whom, of course, cycle through the criminal justice system repeatedly. The program will consist of a managing attorney and a caseworker who would coordinate and support representation provided by a specially trained panel of private attorneys. By providing that specialized representation that focuses on linking defendants with needed treatment resources in the community, they aim to improve outcomes for those defendants and help them become stabilized in their communities. The program is patterned on a very successful program in Collin County that TIDC also funded. It is also a managed assigned counsel program that is focused on defendants with mental illness. And we think that it's a very positive sign that they have taken that program as a model for their own. Our external reviewers gave this very positive ratings. It was unanimously recommended by the TIDC Grants and Reporting Committee. And we do have Judge David Hodges here to say a few words about the proposal. Judge Hodges?
Yes, sir. Afternoon. I do want to thank the committee and Edwin and all the staff for all the help and the recommendation that we proceed with this. We are excited. We have the same problem that Judge Malia was talking about in Galveston County. I have started a mental health treatment court. And one of the first roadblocks that we ran into was we found out that even though we have, say, 100 or 110 10, 15 attorneys on our rotating wheel, only about 10 or 15 of them really know the mental health code very well and have a heart to pursue these cases the way they need to be pursued. And as a result, we have a lot of defendants who are languishing in jail, waiting for hearings that should have been set up with priority, and spending too much time in jail, decompensating while they're in jail, or even going to commitment and then coming back after having been rehabilitated and ready to go to court. And then we don't get them to court in time because the attorneys don't understand the need for that. And they decompensate in the jail again, and it's a revolving door. So what we want to do is, as Edwin said, pattern what they did in Collin County, select those 12 or 15 attorneys who really want to do this, have a heart for it, get them trained, and then have them work hand in hand with the mental health treatment court to get these people on PR bonds if they qualify, get them to treatment earlier, make sure that when they leave the jail, they've got treatment resources and housing and things like that. And so that's what the Managed Assigned Counsel program will do. And that's the caseworker will also help getting these people housing and services and making sure that they're being consistent on their meds till they can get into full services with MHMR. So we're really excited about it. I think it's just, it's imperative that I get something like this done to help me process the folks in the mental health treatment court. So thank you.
Thank you, Judge Hodges. I appreciate your comments. And we do have a committee motion. Judge Maderi, would you like to call it? On page 12.
I'm on here. Committee motion to award new FY21 improvement grant of $169,280 to McLennan County to establish the mental health managed attorney program. Judge Keller? You're on mute.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much for all your work on this.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Judge Hodges.
I'll sign it. Thank you.
The next item in your meeting book is on page 13, and this is a grant request from Nueces County for indigent defense coordinators.
And Edwin, on that, I am going to recuse myself on all discussion and on every vote. Okay, on all this vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. To lay this grant request out, I'm going to hand it over to Doriana Torres. Doriana?
So we are on page 13, and this is a multi-year request from Nueces County for 2 full-time indigent defense coordinators for a fiscal year 21 grant request of $135,121. I do want to mention that this request blossomed out of the Indigent Defense Workshop that we held earlier this year in Austin, Texas, and we have Mary Lee Roberts, the Nueces County Court Administrator, and one of our workshop attendees on the line to answer any questions. So due to the size and volume of indigent cases in Nueces County, the decentralized court systems makes it quite difficult to process requests for counsel, determine eligibility, and to make court appointments. And the addition of 2 court or indigent defense coordinators will streamline and increase efficiency of indigent defense processes across all courts in Nueces County. I believe there are 8 district courts and 5 county courts at law out of that area. So both our external grant review committee and TIDC staff support this application, and the TIDC grants and reporting committee with Judge Maderi recusing have endorsed this. So if there aren't any questions or discussion for Mary Lee or staff, I believe there's a motion on your motion sheet number 6.
Well, let me go ahead then. There's a committee motion to award a new FY21 improvement grant of $135,121 to Nueces County to establish the Indigent Defense Coordinator Services. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Congratulations.
Thank you on behalf of New.
Thank you.
Forward. And I'm going to jump off. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item is on page 14. and it is a grant request from Burnett County for North Hill Country Regional Public Defender. I'm going to turn this over to Scott Ehlers to summarize.
Yes, so we worked with a number of counties in and around Burnett County. We did a planning study for these counties with the plan of establishing a regional public defender office that would have included Burnett County, Blanco, Llano, and San Saba counties. Unfortunately, COVID hit, and that resulted in a number of counties thinking that the situation was frankly just too uncertain for them to commit to establishing the program at this time. There is still interest by these counties, and so we will continue to work with them into the future to see if they would be interested in submitting another proposal next year or the following year.
Thank you, Scott. So since there's not a recommendation for funding on this one, there's no motion or action necessary, but we're pleased to answer any questions if you have them. The next item begins on page 15, and I'm going to hand it over to Jeff to talk about the next group of applications that we received. Jeff?
Thanks, Edwin. And Judge Maderi, if it's okay with you, I'd mention two things very briefly. One, it is the birthday of two important Texans, not only LBJ, but Scott Ehlers, who turns 50 today. So happy birthday, Scott.
Happy birthday, Scott.
Happy birthday. Where's the cake?
Birthday.
Thank y'all.
So, Greg, Jeff, I'm sure he's very happy that you announced how old he is.
Yeah.
If you ever figure out what my birthday is, don't tell everybody.
With Scott, it's so striking that he looks 10 years younger. I'm just so amazed by it and jealous of it, frankly.
It's too late.
Yeah.
It's too late.
I'll stop digging this hole then and just leave it with happy birthday, Scott. And Judge Maderi, the other thing I would ask, if it's okay, the next four grants are grants that we don't recommend funding at this time, and Grants and Reporting did not recommend approval. So if it's okay, I think I'm just going to run through all four of those, and with the invitation that any members please stop me if you have any questions at any point along the way, if that's okay.
That sounds perfect. Thank you.
Dallas County, they're requesting funds for an immigration or crimmigration paralegal. This is related to Padilla versus Kentucky. TIDC did fund a Padilla attorney there in Dallas County, and that program has been successful. However, because of the budget crunch, we have to kind of make a cut somewhere. In Dallas County, we believe may have the ability to fund this on their own. And it was frankly just a lower ranked program by both our external reviewers and by TIDC staff. So we don't recommend funding this at this time. For the next one, I believe we have Potter County. Potter County, I think someday when hopefully we're able to build this, this will make a very big difference in Potter County. Why is it ranked lower than some of the similar grants that we had up, such as the Hill Country or Atascosa? A couple things. One, this came in past the priority deadline, so it kind of moved to the end of the line compared to the other grants. Additionally, two other things. One is that as we talked to stakeholders, Scott Ehlers and I spoke with them last week, and they need a little bit more time, a little bit more work on this, they believe. Lastly, we did receive 4 letters asking TIDC not to fund this at this time. We reached out to the letter writers, which included actually former TIDC Director Jim Bethke, and we believe that their concerns we can address, but I think it's going to take a little bit more time to do it. So we don't recommend funding Potter County at this time, but we're very excited to keep working with them toward a public defender and managed sign council. The next grant, Travis County has applied for funding for a randomized controlled trial to study counsel at first appearance or counsel at magistration. You might remember we have funded similar studies in Hayes County and Potter County. Both studies are going well. Given that we funded similar programs before, we already have a couple studies that we're looking at. We didn't know if it would be necessary to fund this one in addition to it. But more importantly, it's, again, a larger grant because it is a larger county. And we believe that there's a chance that foundations may come through to fund this project. So given all that, we think it's a great program, but don't recommend funding it at this time. And finally, we have Tarrant County. Tarrant County is asking for funding, and actually, funny enough, I was just talking to Representative Smith's office about a similar issue yesterday. They want to study indigent screening, which we think is very important and a good thing to study. They're asking for $50,000. We're not recommending this one, not because of the grant amount, but because as we spoke to Tarrant County in the past couple of weeks, they feel like they need a little bit more time to develop this proposal, number one. And number two, it's kind of moved to the back burner for them based on some other things that they have going on with COVID-19. So again, something that we would very much like to revisit, but don't recommend funding at this time. And I think that's all the grants. I'm happy to take any questions you all might have. Thank you.
All right, Edwin or Jeff, you want to just keep moving on?
Sure thing. Edwin, I think you're on mute, Edwin. That's the line of 2020. You're on mute.
You would think by now. You would think by now. I apologize. Next, I just wanted to turn your attention to the next page in the meeting book to consider the formula grant budget. As I mentioned at the TIDC Grants and Reporting Committee, the committee did unanimously recommend a budget of $22 million for the formula grant program in FY21. And we just want to put that in context for you all. As I mentioned earlier in the meeting, in the previous biennium in FY18 and 19, Commission budgeted $22.3 million. So we're recommending, based on the overall budget situation, to just go back to that level. It was at $25 million most recently, before we knew that we were going to be faced with a tighter budget. At this level, and given the change that was made to the formula by the Commission last year, 80% of counties will actually receive more, generally a little bit more than they did in the FY18 than in FY19 years, and the larger counties would see a modest reduction. The other part of the recommendation here is to eliminate the line item for the supplemental capital urban formula grant. TIDC awarded $1 million for that program in FY20 and in the previous few years, I believe the previous 4 years. That's only counties that are eligible for that are the top 14 counties by population. Given the conversations that the Commission had at the strategic planning meeting a few months ago regarding investments that actually lead to indigent defense improvements and trying to focus on and prioritize those, just point out that this particular part of formula funding wasn't tied to any performance metrics or best practices. When we originally put this into place, we had just received a new appropriation of general revenue from the legislature. That part of that was used to fund this line item, but that general revenue was eliminated from TIDC's budget last session. And so in the context of the budget cuts, the staff recommends eliminating that line item in the budget. So the Grants and Reporting Committee did endorse those proposals. And on the next sheet in your meeting book, which is page 20, it's the same budget sheet that we looked at earlier, but in the far right-hand column, we have the proposed FY 2021 budget for your consideration. And I believe there is a motion.
Jeff, I stepped away from my computer. Can you read that motion, please?
Yeah, the motion is to recommend FY 2021 budget amount of $22 million in formula grants and eliminate the supplemental capital formula line item.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think everybody said aye.
Thank you, Judge. And the next item is to issue the FY 2021 formula grant program request for applications. Each county needs to submit a brief application with a Commissioner's Court resolution. And we haven't proposed any substantive changes for the formula grant program other than adjusting the budget as was just discussed. So there is a motion to issue the FY 2021 formula grant program RFA that appears in your meeting book.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, that's motion 9.
Thank you. Next item is regarding the Indigent Defense Expenditure Report Manual. So each year, auditors and treasurers around the state report to us their total indigent defense expenditures. We issue a manual that tells them how to do that. And this manual has several non-substantive modifications that are summarized on the page before you in the meeting book. Obviously, we've updated the dates. We have clarified the eligibility of mental health expert costs since we've been running into some confusion about that particular issue. We just clarified the policy. And then we are also working with a Public Policy Research Institute that manages our online reporting system to segregate a part of the report where counties tell us how much they're spending on counsel at 1517 magistration. Some counties are providing limited scope representation at that stage of the proceedings, and we are working to adjust the report to better distinguish those expenses from regular representation costs. There's a link to the full report manual, but we have a motion to publish that revised manual.
That's not a committee motion, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay, is there a motion to issue the 2020 Indigent Defense Expenditure Report Manual?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks. The motion carries.
Thank you, members. Next item on the agenda for the grants reporting section is for Deborah Stewart to give us a report on fiscal monitoring. Deborah?
Good afternoon, everyone. Let's see. All right, I was all set and then I lost my page. All right, if you'll turn to page 26 in the meeting notebook. From pages 26 to 32, I've summarized all the fiscal monitoring activities for the current fiscal year. And just to highlight the activities since the March meeting, I've begun 6 additional reviews in which all of these are currently still in various stages. They're all being done remotely, and we're just plugging along and trying to get those done. I have issued 5 final fiscal reports. These include Jim Wells, Harrison, Jasper, Camp, and Tarrant counties. Initial reports were issued to Irion and Jefferson counties. However, earlier today, we did send out the final Jefferson County report. So we just added that one more. And then other activities for this since March. I did go and review all the comprehensive annual financial reports and single audits for 22 counties. And this summary is listed on page 31. But I have 2 action items I need to present. So if you can turn to page 33. Both Tarrant and Jefferson County had financial findings regarding the inclusion of the competency to stand trial expenditures. And so as you've asked me to bring these kind of financial findings to your attention for possible board action, you can see that I've listed information on page 33 for both these counties. For Tarrant County, they over-reported $673,746 by including these expenditures. And when we recalculate the formula grant based on these over-reported amounts, we calculated $23,086 more than what they would have received if they had not included the amount. So keeping in line with board action from previous financial findings, it's the staff's recommendation that the board reduce a future formula grant amount to Tarrant County by this $23,086. Then for Jefferson County, they reported $52,765 in this category, which had a formula grant effect of $2,106. And it's a staff recommendation to reduce a future formula grant award to Jefferson County by this $2,106. So I believe there's motions on the motion sheet, maybe 11 and 12.
Yes, 11 and 12.
I'll leave that up to you to discuss.
Is there a motion to reduce future formula grant payments to Tarrant County by $23,086?
Can I ask a question, please?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. So I just want to get clarification. So whenever a county has been found to over-report or there's a discrepancy, are they given the opportunity to rebut or to respond? And then is there any type of educating or explaining what the issue was and then how they can correct it in the future?
Yes. Yes, and I issue what's called an initial report to every county, and they have the opportunity to respond at that time. I'm actually, while I'm going through the process, I'm in contact and I'm sharing with them things that I'm finding. So we come up with these things, but when I find them, I go ahead and point it out at this point. Both these counties have already corrected the issue going forward. So I don't expect this, but we've really been trying to get this finding out there for the last 4 or 5 years now. And we actually didn't do a financial finding for the first couple of years that we were finding this. We were just really working to try to get it out to all the counties. We've had it included in the IDR manual, highlighted, and so we're trying to do the best. So now that it's like almost 4 or 5 years since we've come up with this, we're still finding it. And so I'm just bringing it to your attention, and the board is, this is how we've handled some of this in the past. So
Chair Collier, if I could just add very quickly, Deborah does a really good job of, not only allowing the counties to, we have a formal process for them to respond. Of course, they did that and acknowledged the issue and to educate them. So I just want to compliment Deborah for her follow-up to make sure that the counties where a mistake is identified, the issue is fully explained for them so that they can avoid it in the future. And that's part of her collaborative approach. So.
Yeah, and I want to say that this is not an uncommon mistake, as Deborah was saying, that counties make. And when she calls it to their attention and they correct it, as far as I know, they have never made that mistake again. So they are getting the message. And one other thing is that if the amount that we have overpaid is insignificant to the point that it would cost more to correct it than to just let it go, we've been letting it go. But that's, I think, under $500.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Is there a motion to reduce future formula grant payment to Tarrant County by $23,086?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. And now, is there a motion to reduce future formula grant payment to Jefferson County by $2,106?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Deborah.
Edwin?
That concludes the section regarding the Grants and Reporting Committee's activities, and I believe we're going to pivot over to the policies and standards items on the agenda.
Edwin, before we do we have a grant modification to take up?
Oh, I apologize. Some of you will recall that I sent an email earlier today. There was one grant modification that came in late in the process from Hays County. There's no cost for this modification. It's regarding the Hays County grant modification for the Padilla compliance pilot project, regional pilot project. The program provides advisals regarding immigration-related collateral consequences to criminal defendants in order to comply with holding in Padilla. The program was originally only serving the 3rd Administrative Judicial Region. However, the usage of the program was lower than projected. So the county is just requesting 2 things. Number 1, to extend the term out into the future through March 2022 with the existing resources that have already been awarded. And then also to expand the counties that can participate in this program beyond the third administrative judicial region to include basically statewide, with the exception of the largest urban counties as detailed on the sheet on the screen now, the top 10 urban counties, counties that already have access to a Padilla resource attorney through an existing program, or counties with public defender offices that have sufficient size and caseload to warrant their own in-house Padilla resource attorney. So those would be the exceptions to the eligibility. And the staff's recommending that we modify that award as requested. And we have, I believe the motion would be to grant the Hays County grant modification as requested on the page in the supplement.
Is there a motion to do that?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks for catching that, Jeff. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Judge Maderi. Is it time for policies and standards then? Alex, are you ready with your report?
I'm ready. So the main issue is legislative proposals. We had a large working group that represented court administration, judges, defenders, the Prosecutors Association, nonprofits, TID staff, and that group met, I believe, twice. And then there were a number of subgroup meetings to deal with individual proposals. And the result was a number of proposals came to the Policy and Standards Committee. We met last Wednesday. On page 39, you'll see 7 proposals that were passed, some unanimously, some split. And then on the next page, there are 4 proposals that TIDC urged last session that didn't make it through, but we're taking them up again, and it was unanimous to re-urge them. So Wesley, are you going to explain what basically what each of these are?
I'm going to do some of them. We're splitting them up between me, Scott, Claire, and Jeff, actually.
Okay, we'll start with number 1.
I'm starting with number 1, so that's definitely me. And thanks for the layout, Alex. Alex, shout out to him. He actually participated in both of the work group meetings. And I think perhaps because of the virtual nature of the meetings, we had fantastic attendance. We had over 50 people on the first meeting and over 30 at the second, including our former member, Judge Alfonso Charles. So it was a really robust and a good process this go around. The first proposal on page 41 of your materials is a proposal that actually was filed last session and came up late in the session and didn't pass. It did not come through our work group though last session. It came this time from Cynthia Garza. She's with us today. She's the chief of the Dallas District Attorney Conviction Integrity Unit. And the basics of the proposal would expand what right now is a very limited right to counsel and post-conviction proceedings for writs of habeas corpus, where there may be a meritorious claim for a defendant who could possibly be not guilty of the crime for which they were convicted, guilty of a lesser included offense, or found guilty of an offense which was later declared unconstitutional by the Court of Criminal Appeals or the Supreme Court. Under current law, that right to counsel is limited to only situations where the prosecuting attorney represents that the person is in fact not guilty. And they found that there are cases where the person may be not guilty, but they can't represent directly that they are not guilty, just that they need someone to represent them to further investigate the potential of that claim. And if warranted, file the writ, which of course the prosecutor is not permitted to do on behalf of the defendant. This one did pass. It was a 2-to-1 vote at the Policies and Standards Committee meeting. And I'm sure Ms. Garza could answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, so we have a committee motion. What discussion is there?
This was one that I had some concerns about, but it's about part that Wesley didn't mention. I don't know if it's still in there or not. Wesley said there are three revisions to the statute. I think there's a 4th, isn't there?
There is. I'm sorry, Judge. There is. So the current law is those three prongs, the suggested change is those three prongs where the DA represents the person may not be guilty, but there is a fourth catch-all that I understand was added by a legislative council when they drafted this bill, House Bill 3500 last session, which is the DA says that the person was or may have been convicted or sentenced in violation of the Constitution of the United States or of the state. So it's a
Yeah, I'm pretty much okay with the resolution or the proposal, but I had some concerns about how broad that was. I just haven't had time to think through the consequences of it. And it wasn't that I was against it so much as I didn't know if I was for it. And that was all I had to say, Alex. I'm not proposing that we do something else.
Okay, anybody else?
Well, Sharon, what are you suggesting? Is that we put it aside for now?
Well, the committee wanted to go forward with it. And the proposal is limited. The legislation would be limited by the state having to ask the judge to appoint counsel. I just, from watching what happens with these very broad statutes, sometimes they get out of hand. I don't know whether that would happen in this case, and I don't really know how it would. It just looked very broad to me, but the other members of the committee voted for it.
Yeah, and I would say one of the measures of restraint on this is the district attorney has to agree. So that doesn't happen all that often. We only see it here in Harris County when there's been some serious misconduct and like a police officer who's been accused of a crime and they have to review those cases. So I'm pretty confident it's just not going to be used willy-nilly.
Well, I'm not confident of that. I wish there were a narrower way to address the kind of cases that fall outside sections 1, 2, and 3, but I don't know what that would be either.
Okay.
If I may, this statute has been, I think, in a part of the law for, I think, I want to say it's been in, I think it was added in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. And it's not used very often. I think you're correct. Because it's only in very narrow situations when the state does find the kind of the narrow case where you do approach the judge for counsel. Obviously the people are not entitled to post-conviction legal representation, but there are situations where the state is in a position where you just cannot determine if somebody has a meritorious claim. And rather than, sit there and you can't do anything about it, there are situations where you have the ability to, you should have the ability to approach the judge and ask for, use this type of legal mechanism to ask for legal representation in very narrow situations and circumstances. And obviously there's still the gatekeeping function that's a part of it. So I don't think anybody would see it as opening up the floodgates, so to speak. So I think it's a situation also where in the Michael Morton Act, we are required under law, under 3914K, we have an ongoing duty to provide exculpatory information to defendants. And so we would have no other legal mechanism to, we would be providing this type of information, but then, if we have some type of suspicion that there's something else there, there would be no other way for the state to be able to, we only know half the story, and there's no way for these indigent defendants to be able to seek any sort of, investigation into their claim. They would need legal counsel to do that. So
I don't necessarily disagree with any of that. have there been problems with people in this situation getting lawyers? Because this organization funds innocence clinics. And I guess maybe the ones that come to our court are the ones that seem that the innocence clinics or some other lawyer signs on to. Do you think it's like a margin of people whose cases should be investigated that are not already served by the resources that are already out there?
I don't think all innocence clinics take a look at, I mean, obviously there's innocence clinics out there, but also they can't take a look at every claim, obviously. And, you know, if you take a look at the broader scope, I mean, you know, you have the whole state of Texas, you know, having the issues that could potentially, you know, pop up in the whole state, and you have very small jurisdictions as well. And so I don't see, you know, how this kind of broadening, you know, the ability for the state to, you know, approach a judge in this situation, very narrow circumstances really, would kind of, you know, open up any type of floodgates or anything like that. And I don't think that, you know, the innocence projects, they can't, you know, I think they're overloaded, and I think they have some of them have very narrow scopes as to what kind of cases they take. I mean, I can't speak for what their criteria is, but, you know, I don't see them looking at every type of situation.
I think you're right about that.
Was there a particular situation that occurred that prompted this out of Dallas County?
No, I think it's just not really. I mean, I think it's just a situation that, you know, you see the need statewide, just in speaking with other attorneys in the state, and having those types of conversations statewide.
You know, honestly, I'm not opposed to this. I'm just leery of it, but I guess that's something the legislature can look at if we support it anyway. And also there won't be, I think somebody pointed out at the committee meeting that there won't be a fiscal note to this because the state won't bear the cost of it, but the counties will. Which is also something the legislature could look at.
They should look at it.
May I just add that I was thinking that this would also help with judicial efficiency. If they were granted an attorney, it could help with the process of moving the case forward as opposed to being represented by themselves.
Okay, well, there is a committee motion. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I'm opposed.
Okay, thank you. The motion carries.
No.
Let's see, I'm not sure I got the votes, but it sounded like more ayes. Does that sound right?
Okay. Evanson Smith opposed? Is it Judge Evanson?
I was opposed. Yes.
That's
okay, thank you.
Any others?
Yeah.
Motion carries.
All right, so next proposal, who's laying that out?
Scott will be doing that. Number 2.
Yes, number 2. So the second proposal seeks to modify Article 1517, the magistration statute, to ensure that magistration forms are properly preserved. This is a TIDC staff proposal. No issues were raised at the work group. This was unanimously approved by the Policies and Standards Committee. This is very similar to a proposal that was brought to the board in 2018 and approved by the board in 2018. The aim here is to extend some record retention timeframes for magistration forms, which includes information about when defendants requested counsel and whether they requested counsel. And TIDC policy monitors use this information and these documents to make sure that counties are appointing counsel in a timely manner. This proposal passed last session. It was vetoed by the governor because the bill delegated to the State Library and Archives Commission the discretion to set retention periods. And the governor said that the legislature should be the one to provide clear guidance on that issue. And so this proposal seeks to address the governor's concerns, and it establishes that magistration forms must be retained for 3 years after final judgment is rendered or the proceedings are otherwise terminated in the case, which is the same time period that bail records must be kept. And because magistration forms typically also record bail amounts on them, we thought that that was important to record, to have those record retention periods the same between these forms and the bail records. That's what it does.
All right. So there's a committee motion. Is there discussion? Okay. It was unanimous by the committee. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
All right. It carries unanimously. Proposal number 3.
I'll lay this one out.
Okay.
This is on page 46, and this is also regarding Article 1517 magistrate hearings. So what this would do is clarify magistrates' duties, and the goal here is to make sure that requests for counsel at magistration are transferred and ruled on by the appointing authority. So the first thing this would do is break up section 1517A. Right now it's over 500 words in one long block of text. This would number the duties in that section. It would also clarify existing duties under the statute to provide reasonable assistance with paperwork for requesting counsel and make sure that the paperwork gets transferred within 24 hours. Again, those duties are already in the statute. This would just add some clarifying language. And finally, it would require that magistrates ensure that defendants can understand the hearing, and if they can't, require that magistrates appoint counsel or notify the appointing authority. The work group added that last requirement, but otherwise didn't have major changes. They're happy with this proposal. We also sent it to justices of the peace who are happy with it. And I believe the Policies and Standards Committee approved this unanimously.
There's a committee motion. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carried unanimously. All right, proposal number 4. Who's going to lay that out?
I will, Alex. Proposal number 4 is on page 50 of your meeting notebook. This was presented to the work group by Nate Fennell with the Texas Fair Defense Project, and I believe he's in the Zoom room for any questions. It deals with ensuring visitation of appointed lawyers to clients who are housed in jails more than 50 miles away from the court and where the case is standing. There's over 1,000 people, at least at the beginning of the summer, that were housed out of county because of shortness of beds in some counties. Hayes County is one that comes to mind. And they receive regular reports of defendants who are not being visited by their attorneys. And the attorneys, on the other hand, note that they often are paid flat fees and are not compensated for traveling what could potentially be quite a long distance to visit their clients. This would require that counties that do house defendants in jails more than 50 miles away do amend their fee schedule to provide payment for those visits, or at least provide a method for them to securely and confidentially speak with their clients. That was an addition made at the work group level, just taking into account the more liberal use of technology to communicate with clients in jail. There was consensus of the work group, and there was a unanimous vote as well at the Policies and Standards Committee to support this proposal.
Okay. Any committee motion, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carries unanimously. That brings us to number 5. Is that you,
Yes.
Wesley?
This is for Scott. So proposal number 5, this is a CIDC staff proposal. No issues were raised by the work group. This was unanimously approved by the Policies and Standards Committee. It would modify the managed assigned counsel statute to explain the full array of services that are offered by managed assigned counsel programs and codify the ability of a MAC to have an oversight board. It would also allow managed assigned counsel programs to appoint counsel in capital cases, which they currently do not have that authority. In terms of the clarification of the statute, it would note that MACs can appoint or provide investigators, experts, or other support services. And that's the gist of the proposal.
Okay. Is committee motion, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, now we're up to proposal 6, which is mine. And I'll preface this with, this did not have a unanimous agreement in the working group. It came to the committee and the committee then amended it and passed it 2-1. And I don't want to rely on my memory as to how it reads right now. So could Scott or Wesley, could you tell us where we are on that one?
Certainly. So proposal number 6 would direct TIDC to establish caseload standards and require counties to comply with those caseload standards. As many of you know, the TIDC has the authority to establish various standards, including standards for ensuring appropriate appointed caseloads for counsel appointed to represent indigent defendants. That's in Government Code 79034A3. TIDC's board has not chosen to establish those caseload standards. And so this would essentially ask the legislature to direct TIDC to do so. It would also authorize TIDC to impose remedies for non-compliance with those caseloads. I did want to mention one change that we may have missed from the P&S committee. And if y'all decide to pass this proposal, you should address this language. So right now, the proposal says that TIDC shall impose a remedy for noncompliance. There was a discussion at the committee level to change that shall to may. So it would say that TIDC may impose a remedy for noncompliance. And the caseload standards would have to be established not later than January 1st, 2022. I think that's it.
Okay, discussion?
Yeah, I had a few things I wanted to say. First of all, my recollection of the committee meeting was that Jim Allison, I don't think he's here today, said that I think that the work group approved this in concept. Is that right, Scott?
Yes, so it was approved by the work group with the caveat that remedies, the remedy language said TIDC shall impose a remedy for non-compliance pursuant to Section 173-307 of the Texas Admin Code if the county received more than 50% reimbursement funding from TIDC in the previous fiscal year. So it's the only time in which remedies for non-compliance would occur would be in counties that received over 50% funding from TIDC.
Well, now I'm confused. You're saying that that was part of the legislative work group proposal?
That was what the legislative work group approved with that language included in it. And then at the P&S committee, that language was struck out. And at that point, Jim Allison said, okay, I can no longer support this proposal with that language stripped out. And so now, you cannot say that this was, a consensus item from the stakeholder committee.
Okay, well, that's not how I understood it, and I'm sure I misunderstood it, but I guess the bottom line is Jim said, this is no longer a consensus item from the work group.
That is correct.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, regardless of how it got there. I have two concerns about this, and this is the first one.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
On the surface, understand the premise is that lawyers don't have more than can.
Judge, I'm
I
having
would
real.
think that would be the behind the scenes.
You're cutting out, Commissioner.
Would you be willing to?
Cutting out?
Yes, ma'am. Would you be willing to type
this?
Would you be willing to type it in the chat box?
Or you could try moving closer to
see if can hear me better.
Can you move closer to the speaker?
It's a bandwidth issue.
I think if you turn the video off, she should be able to have better bandwidth.
Can you hear me? No?
Try turning your video off and see if that helps.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I think the premise for this would be that lawyers don't have too many cases, therefore their clients don't get good service. Is that accurate?
Can be.
Why else you would do it? But from the county's perspective, we're paying these guys, in Williamson County, we have lots of lawyers, perhaps. I don't know if that's actually true because they've gone up in their price, but how does this affect rural areas that have limited resources?
Well, I mean, in my survey of across Texas, and is that most of the rural counties, those lawyers are not getting anywhere near to the numbers that will put them over.
That depends, because a lot of them practice in multiple jurisdictions. So I do have concerns about this proposal. I think it needs to be, I don't know, we need to be very careful with it because of the rural counties and the fact that we don't even know in some instances how many cases an attorney is handling.
Yeah, there were two things aside from that I wanted to mention. The first is that it struck me as strange that we would support legislation that tells the legislature to require us to do something we already can do and we haven't done. And I don't really understand why we would do that. But the other thing is, we talked about this at the last meeting. According to the guidelines from a study that this commission commissioned, and the recent numbers, it looks to me like the numbers, given the numbers that are in the guidelines, half of the defendants that receive counsel, indigent defendants that receive counsel, are being represented by people who are over the guidelines. And so presumptively too busy to do a good job. Now, I really don't believe that's happening. And if it's not, then there's something wrong with the guideline numbers. I'm not opposed to caseload standards, but I think the difficulty is getting ones that are workable. And we haven't done it yet. And I don't know why we'd ask the legislature to require us to do it. So those are my concerns.
And to your point, Judge, I think that I would just want more information, and I mean, how will this impact the 254 counties? What are the caseloads for all the attorneys? Maybe y'all have looked at that. I don't know. Maybe the committee looked at that. There may be certain areas that they're trying to target. I mean, it just seems like, I don't know if it's a good idea or not. I don't have enough information.
Well, another thing that came up at the last meeting Judge Torres pointed out, if I recall correctly, that the numbers that TIDC is using don't match the numbers that are being reported of cases being reported to OCA. Jeff, was that?
Yeah, that's correct. You're correct, Judge. If you look at the OCA numbers, they're very, very different from the numbers collected by TIDC, because the TIDC numbers in some instances include multiple appointments in the same case. So you might have someone who gets arrested, gets assigned an attorney, doesn't show up to court, goes out on an FTA warrant, and yeah, the attorney gets off, and 3 years later they're arrested. And now you got another appointment, and so you've got multiple attorneys in one case, and it doesn't even have to be that extreme. So the TIDC numbers include that. When I look at the TIDC numbers for Medina County, they are not correct.
And I would say that the numbers we receive are reported. Actually, Joel, when I hand it to Joel, because I think to the extent there's a discrepancy, I think Joel may be able to explain that a little bit.
Yes, numbers reported to OCA are reported by the clerks, and numbers reported to TIDC are reported by the auditors. The auditors, they're supposed to have like one appointment per case as far as court totals, but there usually is a difference between what the clerks report and what auditors report. I think the auditors' numbers are fairly reliable, though, because there is a way that you can go back and double check them. There's not currently an auditing function of the clerks reporting.
I've personally looked into this for my county, and I will tell you, even like attorneys that don't show up at a docket, and we'll substitute them because the defendant is incarcerated, and those seem to be reported as 2 appointments and not necessarily paying particular attention to the fact that it's the same case.
Yes, and Judge Torres, at our strategic planning meeting, actually, Deborah Stewart had this. Some jurisdictions do have some issues, and this is one of the things that she checks for on her fiscal monitoring reviews. But under our instructions, should only be 1 appointment per case. Now, we do have an attorney detail report that's a little separate. They would be reported separately, but for the court report, it should be reported as 1 case.
And Judge Torres, we can reach out to the auditor of Medina and see what this discrepancy is and figure that out, if that's helpful.
I've brought this up before. I more than once. The OCA numbers don't match.
Whatever the discrepancy is, I think it adds to the detriment of this proposal.
That's right.
Yeah.
Except for the fact that TIDC would set the caseloads, and therefore you could take that into account in setting the caseloads of what a case would be.
Well, I understand that proposal doesn't tie us to the report that has the guidelines, but I think the reason that it doesn't is because these issues have been raised. I mean, that's the report that we commissioned, and I don't think any of us believe that half of the defendants are getting inadequate counsel around the state. So I don't know what to do about that, but I don't think this is the way to go.
Okay.
So one of my concerns deals with the quality. If this board has had the ability to set standards, then they should have, in my opinion. I just got on the board, but if that's something that we're seeing an issue with, then we need to address it and hold them accountable if they're getting state dollars for it. So if there's an issue with quality representation in a particular county, you need to be able to identify it and then rectify it and hold them accountable, just like we're held accountable with other issues. So that's why I support it. I think that there is a standard that's out there. You guys can adjust it as you see fit once it comes before you. But if you guys aren't going to do it, yourself, then hey, the legislature is happy to step in and to try to provide protection for taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, I agree. And that's another point of mine. The legislature can do it with or without our support. But that brings up another thing, because what you said is right. We should not be granting state funds to counties that are not doing the job they're supposed to do. But as Jim Allison pointed out at the commission meeting, that's a two-edged sword, because if you stop giving money to some of the counties, they're just going to provide worse representation. We don't want to encourage that. And it's not an easy problem to solve, because both sides of that are true.
But I do believe it is a county by county situation. depending on what's going on, within that particular county. And I don't know that we should be trying to implement some type of mandate here on all counties, given that situation.
Yeah, it is not one size fits all.
I agree with you because, just to the point made earlier, if this is a level that is so high that there are counties that you won't even touch it, but maybe they're the problems. The problems are there. I mean, I'm just not sure that the problem is well defined. And if it's certain counties, a one size fits all, I'm not sure, gets us there. And really it should be targeted toward the counties that have the problems, and let's address those and see what the real problem is and see how we can fix it. I'm just not sure this gets there.
My understanding is that this bill would allow you to make that standard, to set that standard. So it could be, targeted for different areas. So one area may require a larger standard versus the other. So I don't think that this would be one size fits all. I think you guys could modify it if you are given the authority to do so.
It would appear to me that we have the authority to do this. We don't need the legislature to tell us to do it. We need to have an internal working group to determine where the problems are. I'm sure that Harris County, Dallas, Tarrant, Bear, El Paso, other counties, they do have problems. My problem is I don't have enough attorneys. So I don't think we need somebody to tell us how to do our job. We just probably need to decide how we're going to do our job. I support doing it that way.
Okay. All right. Well, it was my idea. I still support it, but I can see there is, real dissension about how it would be affected. Why don't we go ahead and just go ahead and vote on it? Anyone who's in favor?
I am.
I am too.
And I'll file it next session if you don't take it anyway. I'll file it.
Thank you, Chair. All opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
The motion does not carry.
Respectfully opposed, yes.
Yeah. That's fine. All right, so we'll move on to number 7. Who's going to talk about that?
Number 7 is Scott again. So this is Scott's final proposal, I think. So y'all won't have to hear from me anymore again for the rest of the day. So proposal 7 would modify the membership of TIDC's board to include a representative from a managed assigned counsel program and a judge. This proposal was brought to the working group by Elise Ferguson, who is the director of the Mental Health Managed Assigned Counsel Program in Collin County. I'm not sure if Elise is here today or not, but I'll lay out the bill. If any questions come up, we'll see if she's here.
She is here, Scott.
Okay, she is. Okay, great. So in terms of, I just need to give you a little history of how this proposal evolved over time. So what came out of the working group was a modification to the TIDC board that would have add a managed assigned counsel director, as well as a directly impacted person, someone who had been represented by assigned counsel or their family member. At the P&S committee, Judge Keller had raised the issue of wanting to keep the number of judges essentially or about the same as what they were before, because that was a big issue when TIDC and the board was established, was the ratio of judges to non-judges on the board. And so she had suggested removing the directly impacted person position and making that a judicial position. And staff was directed to figure out some language for that judicial position. And so we did so, and what we had decided on was adding a judicial position that would be a justice of the peace, municipal court judge, or appointed magistrate who regularly presides at Article 1517 hearings. So that is the proposal that we came up with. And then, I should also mention that, throughout, while we were, going through this process, we discovered some problematic language in the existing statutes that gave the public defender position, the public defender chief, authority to appoint somebody else to take their place. And so we discussed that with legislative counsel. They agreed that that was problematic language in the existing statute. And so this proposal would also would clean up that language too. So that's that on proposal 7.
Okay. So is there discussion? Everybody's good with that?
Yeah.
All right. Well, then we'll call the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Respectfully, no.
Okay. So it carries.
Thank you.
All right. So now we have the 4 previous proposals that are being re-urged. Wesley, you going to describe those?
Yes, Alex, I'll do the first 3. And I'll try and be brief. They weren't discussed at the legislative work group again. We didn't really have time. You can see we already had quite a few, and there were several y'all don't even see today. So we brought them directly to the Policies and Standards Committee, which unanimously adopted them in one motion, these 4 together. So briefly, the first one, and the first 2, in fact, came from Alex's office. The first one would repeal a requirement in the public defender statute that authorizes a public defender to investigate the financial conditions of their client and then requires them to report that information to the judge. And the note is that would potentially violate attorney-client privilege. And there isn't a similar requirement for assigned counsel attorneys to report on their client's financial status. So that was filed, all of these were filed last session and just not make it through the process. There was no known opposition to any of them at the legislature either. Number 9 would, and number 10 both deal with appointment of counsel at magistration. And this one, number 9, would specifically provide for limited scope appointments just for magistrate hearings. There's a provision in the code now that provides that once an attorney is appointed on a case, that they stay on the case until the case is disposed or they're removed by the judge for good cause. Of course, that was written at a time when there was no counsel magistration and it wasn't contemplated, but this has tripped up counties who have sought to provide this representation. And the suggestion here would to provide clear authority in the statute for limited scope appointments. We've seen this statute raised as a concern in each county that's tackled this. Number 10 is somewhat related, and this is would change a provision which to allow an attorney who has a private criminal law practice to serve as a public defender on a part-time basis for the purpose of representing folks at magistration. So Fort Bend County is the one that urged this, and it's still an issue. Because of the staffing model that they have, they need part-time public defenders for these dockets. They are now providing counsel. And because of this limitation, they've actually hired civil law attorneys who do not practice criminal law for magistration. And that doesn't intuitively make sense to them. So this would permit, in those limited circumstances, someone with a private law practice to serve as a part-time public defender for these hearings. And then at number 11, I'm going to turn over to Jeff briefly.
Sure. For number 11, this is another one like the past few that Wesley just mentioned that the board approved last session. Primarily, this was a cleanup bill at first, and then eventually there was a piece that was added to it that would allow TIDC to fund nonprofits on a pretty limited basis. Basically, if you think about the Regional Public Defender Office or the PDEA project that we have, we're right now, for our PDO for many years, we funded it through Lubbock County. For PDEA, we fund it through Hayes County, and the counties kind of serve as a pass-through so that we can support multiple counties. This would allow us to fund the nonprofit directly where the nonprofit is engaged in indigent defense that benefits multiple counties. And I think that's it.
Okay. Any discussion on either 8, 9, 10, or 11?
I have a question about number 11. So who's the gatekeeper on that grant?
So TIDC would still be the gatekeeper. Basically, this allows us, just basically would give give TIDC the flexibility to fund, say again, like the Padilla project or RPDO directly, as opposed to going through a county. But again, it would be up to this board to still make the funding.
So if a county has an issue, they would come to TIDC to resolve it. So.
Yeah, that's right. And this is one that we worked with Jim Allison on last time, and then Representative Murr filed.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so committee motion on all 4, 8, 9, 10, 11. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? They pass. Okay, that ends all our legislative proposals. Next, there's a report on 2019 defense plans. Is that Joel?
Correct. If you could please turn to page 68 for a summary of our indigent defense plan review process. Every 2 years, counties must report to us and submit their indigent defense plans. The plans have become more detailed over the years. They have to include methods for how defendants can request counsel, the local indigent defense standard, how attorneys can get on the list and their qualifications, as well as timeframes for appointment, how attorneys are selected, and how they are paid as well. Plans also have to include relevant forms and contracts. This last plan submission due date was November 1st, 2019. And if a county does not submit all of its plans, it gets a formula grant hold. We finally have gotten all the counties to have submitted their plans, and this is a little bit ahead of schedule. Thank you to Lindsay Bellinger, who has been very active at calling judges and reminding them to submit their plans. Once a county submits all its plans, staff reviews the plans to be sure they meet our standards. And so far, we have cleared out 110 counties with these qualifications. We still have a lot of work to go, but we're hopeful to get it done fairly soon. So if you could please turn to page 69 for a summary of recent policy monitoring activity. Since the March meeting, we have received 10 monitoring report responses. We've also issued 5 new reports, and those reports are to Dawson, Gaines, Deaf Smith, Tarrant, and Jefferson counties. These new reports are a little different than our past reports. They now have a quality assessment supplement, and this quality assessment supplement looks to see how well counties are overseeing the quality of services being provided to indigent defendants. This supplement does not make findings and recommendations to counties, but it attempts to be a guidepost for them. And some of the things that we look at include the use of investigators, are attorneys meeting with their clients promptly, and does the county have a method to oversee that? And what are attorney caseloads looking like? In larger counties, we also provide a survey for criminal defense attorneys. So going forward, this is what we're doing on a test basis. So far, we've gotten fairly good results, and I think we'll continue to see good results. If we could continue on to page 71. Since the COVID crisis has erupted, we've had to alter our monitoring reviews. Normally, our reviews have a very large on-site component. That has gone away. They're now virtual. Depending on the county, we can still do most of what we did before. But if a county's paper-based and doesn't show their dockets online, there's not much we can do. And so we've adjusted our schedule a little bit. Previously, we had planned to go to a lot of counties for follow-up reviews, and many of these counties were paper-based. But now we've put on the schedule counties that were eligible for us to go under the risk assessment. But these counties are mostly electronic based. And so now we're currently doing reviews in Harris, Montgomery, and Parker counties. But after those, we will complete the year with new reviews in Brazoria, Tom Green, and Williamson counties, as well as a follow-up review in Galveston. And that completes my updates. If you have any questions, please let me know.
I just wanted to say that the supplemental reports are interesting, and the responses from the defense attorneys are the most interesting part. And I think we can get a lot of information from them. So thank you, Jeff, I guess, for thinking of that, whoever did.
And Claire did a lot of the piloting and drafting of that. And Joel, just to applaud Joel real quick, his team's transition to moving online for monitoring was impressive. So thank you, Joel, for kind of rolling with the punches in COVID.
Okay, so the last item is complaints. Is that Lindsay?
Yes, thank you. If you can, please turn to page 72 in your meeting book for a summary of recent complaints. We have received 58 complaints since the March 12th board meeting. 36 of those complaints require no further action. 16 have been or will be referred to the state bar. 9 have been referred to Innocence Projects, 2 to the Texas Jail Project, 2 to self-serve legal services, and 5 thus far have been forwarded to local officials. 22 complaints remain open. A majority of those were received relatively recently, and they're letters. 3 of the complaints allege issues potentially within our scope out of Bastrop County. From the first complaint from the Just Us Participatory Defense Organization, the complainant indicates that 2 attorneys on the wheel have received a disproportionate number of cases, and 1 attorney has a caseload well over TIDC guidelines. The second complaint is from Anna Harris. The complainant indicates that defendants are not given an opportunity to request counsel until arraignment, which can happen 3 to 5 months later. And this is folks in custody and out of custody, she clarified. The third complaint is from Roxy Rodriguez. The complainant indicates that in response to a request to meet with her counsel, she received an email from her attorney who indicated that the county budgets for 2.67 hours for flat fee payment on pleas and will not pay him or another attorney for a great deal of time or resources evaluating the case or speaking to the defendant. Thus far, the action taken on this complaint has included forwarding to the complaint to the attorney and the judge and referring the complainant to the state bar per our policy. I've also been notified that Ms. Rodriguez has now received new appointed counsel, and just during this board meeting, I received a call from the judge in that case who wanted to discuss the complaint further. Thank you. That concludes my report.
All right, that's the last item for policy and standards.
Thank you, Alex. Let's move on to the improvement team report.
So, yeah, if I would just, y'all can see what we've done here. Kathleen has been involved in a lot of trainings over the last few months. I'll let her speak to that. Planning studies, we have a planning study that's going on right now for Ellis County. They have requested that. I've done a number of meetings with all kinds of committees, stakeholder meetings in the state, Judicial Commission on Mental Health, NAPD System Builders Committee, and I just finished up my term at the State Bar of Texas Legal Services to the Poor and Criminal Matters Committee, and I'm also serving on a number of TCDLA committees. Kathleen?
Thank you, Scott. So to briefly discuss an update, because we were able to have a second class of the future indigent defense leaders, I've been working closely with TCDLA. While the mentees trip to Gideon's Promise, the out-of-state training has been delayed because of COVID, we've been able to fill that gap and provide some resources so that the young lawyers are connected. We were successfully able to have our kickoff event virtually, and I've touched base with all of the new young lawyers, and they're very grateful and thankful that TIDC and TCDLA and Harris County have worked together to give them support during this time. And so other than that, that's pretty much the major report in terms of our training efforts.
That's good.
Anything else?
Judge Keller?
Yes.
Judge Keller, I'm sorry, I just one brief housekeeping matter. We did miss one of the motions on the motion sheet. After the committee, or rather the commission made all those funding decisions, we just had a motion on page 8 to adopt, or rather a motion referring to adopting the budget on page 8 that simply incorporates the funding decisions that were made today.
I
So
saw
I
it. I
would-
was confused. Okay. Is there a, tell us what the motion is again, please.
It's motion number 8 to adopt the draft FY 2021 budget, and that reflects the all of the funding decisions that the commission made today.
Right. Is there a motion to do that?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a
So
second?
moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It passes. Thank you very much, Edwin, for catching that.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay, Scott, were you finished?
God, I believe you're on mute.
That's okay. I think he's finished.
Yes, Judge, I'm done.
Okay, Jeff, next meeting.
We haven't scheduled it yet. We're going to send something out to the members. I believe we're looking at December, though.
Okay. Any new business? Any public comment? Hearing nothing else, we will adjourn, and thank you all so much for making it to the meeting, and happy birthday, Scott. Hope you enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.